Good morning, Colleen.
Good morning.
To everyone that has joined us so far, we will get started here in just another few minutes while we're waiting for the rest of our participants and panelists. So just sit back and start thinking of questions for these amazing women. Hi, Kelsey. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. Gearing up and having people trickle in, so we'll get started in just a few minutes, but
Okay. Sounds good.
excited to have you both with us today.
Excited to be here.
Let's see. So a few housekeeping details before we get started for everyone listening. I do have our chat box open, so you are welcome to enter questions from your student groups or from teachers. Anybody that is watching, you can submit them at any time. If I can fit them in while we're talking, we'll fit them in. If not, we have Q&A time at the end, so we'll make sure that we address as many questions as we can. But feel free to ask anything and everything from our panelists. They're here to share their stories, their experiences, and really just what it's like to be a woman in engineering and what engineering really is for them. So we'll have a lot of time to just explore and discover the field of engineering. So I do want to go ahead and get us started because this is episode 2 of Girls Steam Ahead. And if you weren't able to join us last week, it went by really quickly because we had so much fun discussing all of your experiences. So I want to make sure we can dive right in. So welcome. If you don't know our program, I am Dr. Megan Federer with the Works Ohio Center for History, Art, and Technology. And I have 2 fantastic women from the local community with us here today. And on Wednesdays, for the next several weeks, we are talking STEAM with engineers, designers, technologists, health professionals, a whole host of different women in our community. And this program is really brought together by a lot of our partners in STEM education that are really engaged and invested in supporting, youth and exploring these careers. And so many thanks to our specific sponsors for this program, Facebook, the Heath Newark Licking County Port Authority, and Park National Bank. And of course, I've already mentioned their names once if you were on, but I do want to introduce the 2 women joining me today. They have a wealth of experience to share, both from growing up in the area and working in the area. And I'm going to go ahead and let them tell us a little bit about themselves before we maybe dive into some of our questions. But we have Colleen here from Corna-Kokosing. And Colleen, I would love to hear anything you want to share to get us started today.
Sure. So my name is Colleen Cross. I am a project engineer with Corna-Kokosing Construction. We do commercial construction in the general central Ohio area at this location. So my job basically entails managing a good portion of the construction project, from planning the work, scheduling, budgeting, and we are kind of that communication piece between the owner and the people actually installing the work. So that's basically what I do on a regular basis. And safety is a big thing too.
Always good to end with that, safety.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it actually mean for you to be an engineer at Corna-Kokosing before we dive further?
Yeah. So our project engineers, we are very technical based. So we are constantly looking at drawings and working to understand how are we going to build this project. So a lot of my day involves problem solving. So that is probably from, you name it, from working with contractors on technical issues to just basically anything that happens. It kind of, construction is a ever changing, ever evolving, as a building goes up, it kind of changes throughout the process. So it's always thinking ahead and dealing with issues as they arise and thinking ahead as well.
So Colleen, joining you is Kelsey Riffle, who is from a different field of engineering. So I'm going to try to say this and hopefully that I get it right, but you're a metallurgical engineer. Is that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what it means to be a metallurgical engineer at ArcelorMittal.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm Kelsey Riffle. I currently work at ArcelorMittal, which is a steel company. So we make all of the steel that goes into the cars that you drive, the washer and dryer that you have at home, train cars, all sorts of different things. And so in that company, I am a quality engineer in our steel producing department. So I review all of the material that we produce from the previous days and make sure that it's okay to go to our customers and then therefore go to you. So we make sure that it's safe for you to use and it has all of the mechanical properties that our customers are asking for.
Excellent. So I didn't even intend to try to get engineers from two different fields, but we succeeded to try to get some pretty diverse perspectives on what engineering really means. And that's one of the things that we talk about with our STEM programs, is that just because it's engineering doesn't mean that you are doing the same thing day in and day out, or even the same thing as another engineer, right? So maybe tell us a little bit about what is the most interesting thing about your job that you have right now? And I'll maybe pitch that to Colleen first, and we'll see. Kelsey can have a little time to think about it.
So for me, the most interesting part of my job is I'm solving a problem I'm solving something 1 minute, and then the next day, even sometimes that day, you see it get put in place right in front of your eyes. So the coolest thing about my job, I would say, is that you can kind of see all your hard work get built right in front of you. And then also I have different owners for each project that I work on. And I actually work, that's where I am right now, is on a construction job site. So this is my office. And being able to interact with the people who are going to be using that building. So for example, I'm working on a school right now. So I get to interact with students, well, not as much currently because of COVID, but with the principals at the school and the hopefully some of the teachers here soon, so that they can kind of see what the construction process is like and kind of integrating them so that they can see how their new school is being built.
What a great opportunity for learning in action too, for them to really get the inside perspective on what goes into such a project that they're going to be able to use. That's something that's pretty awesome. What about you, Kelsey? What gets you up and excited to go to work every day as an engineer?
Well, first things first, I have to have my coffee. That gets me real excited. But I also really like how every day is different. So some days I'm in the office, I'm entering a new type of steel that we're going to produce, or finding a project to work on so that we can make our process work more smoothly. Or other days I'm out in the mill and I'm looking at slabs, or I'm doing safety audits with our operators, or just all sorts of different things. And so every single day is so different. I can come in with a plan in the morning and say I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then partway through the day, it's, oh, actually, I'm going to be doing A and B instead today. So I just like that not every day is the same. There's something different every day, and there's always a new challenge that I have to face and work through. And there's always constant problem solving. And I get to work on a team with people that are super awesome. And I get to learn from them as well. So it's every day is different, and it's always a challenge.
So I'm hearing that a lot from both of you, that you love the challenging aspect of your job, that you get to experience new things every day and really just try to solve problems, which maybe that's what engineering is for you, is solving the problems using your skills, which is awesome. So maybe this leads into one of the questions that we saw a lot in previous programs and in our last episode, but how did you maybe become interested in engineering? How did you know that that was going to be your passion, that you were so invigorated to go and explore, get an education in, become active in, and even a career?
Yeah, I can go first again. So I guess from a pretty young age, I grew up playing with Legos and wooden blocks and things like that. My dad was very big into home renovations throughout my childhood, so he would always bring us in and help us understand, you know, how does this work, kind of thing. And I was always interested in, how does that work? Why does it work like that? And throughout school, I was good in elementary school and high school, very interested in math and science, particularly physics. And I had a physics high school teacher who said, you should look into engineering, and specifically civil engineering, which is what I ended up getting my degree in from the University of Dayton. And then throughout my courses, it's pretty design heavy. So learning how the structures of buildings work, understanding how roadways are constructed and things like that in terms of the design portion of it. And then during a career fair at school, I went up to my company and met some of the people who worked there, and they described what it was like to be an engineer in construction. And I said, I think that I like that. And it sounds kind of like what the qualities of time management and using your technical skills and your people skills, that's kind of how I got pulled into construction. And then seeing that I thrive in this kind of environment is what has had me stay in it for 5 years.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of similar. I started out, I always wanted to know how things worked, and I was really good at math and science. It was always, every year, family would ask, what's your favorite subject? Math and science. So I always knew I wanted to go into something that was heavy in math and science, but I didn't quite know that I wanted to be an engineer until I got to high school and I joined a robotics club. So I was the electrical lead the first year that I was on the team. And it was a lot of problem solving. It was figuring out, where can we fit this? Where can we put this? How do we connect everything together? And really bringing a bunch of different components together and how they mesh and come together to work properly. So after that, I knew I wanted to be an engineer, but I didn't know what type. I knew I did not want to be an electrical engineer because the electronic side of things was a little confusing to me, didn't quite like it as much as I thought I would. So when I went to college, I went in undeclared engineering. And in our fundamentals of engineering courses that we took, we got to explore all the different types. And then they had a little major fair where you get to go and meet the academic advisors for the different majors. And my advisor had a demonstration where she had a diaper and she poured water on it, and then she opened it up and she showed me the inside and how all the water gets absorbed. And I thought it was super cool, and wanted to go into polymers. And then I took an organic chemistry class and did not enjoy organic chemistry. So I switched to metals, which has actually been super awesome. I met representatives from ArcelorMittal at a career fair for a professional conference, and just talking to them, they were talking about how they get to work with molten steel every day and everything is really hot and the machinery is really big, and I thought that was super cool. So I got an internship, and then I've been at the company for about 2 years now as a full-time employee after 2 years of internships, and it's the most rewarding career. So.
I love hearing how much both of your careers have been kind of an evolving path as you get exposed to new interests, new influences, as people introduce you to new types of opportunities in your field. And I really think that highlights something that's important for youth and, adults to really recognize about what we do and about what you do. So that was really insightful. Now, we do have a question that I think relates to what we've been talking about, so I wanted to go ahead and throw this one into the fold. We talked about what the most interesting part of your career might be and what makes you get up, but maybe a quick snippet of what is your favorite and least favorite part of your job, whether in general being an engineer or specific to working in construction or working with metals, as you do have different types of backgrounds.
I can start. So I think my favorite part about the job is the everyday changing. I really like that. In my current role, I'm mostly in the office, but I do get to go out a little bit. But I think that's also my least favorite part is I don't, as a quality engineer, I don't get as much interaction with our operations and I don't get to have as much of a hands-on approach. But I have the opportunities to go out and do those things if my workload allows it. So my favorite part is having all the different opportunities. My least favorite is not having the time to take advantage of those.
I know you already mentioned time management once, Colleen, so this could tie in.
Yeah. So like Kelsey had said previously, when you come into you kind of get yourself your game plan for the morning of what all you're going to accomplish in a day. And then somebody's at my desk typically when I get here in the morning that says, oh, I have this thing, can you help me with it? So it's definitely, I think it's across all fields and trades that people are in, that you can have a plan at the beginning of the day, and then you have to use your time management to make sure you still get done what you were going to do, but then also be ready for basically anything. So that is probably one of the most difficult things to do, but I have always thrived more when I had more to do, and which would force me to be time management rather than when I had less things to do. But I do love the ability. So I am in a job trailer. So if I need a break or I just want to go see it, I just walk outside and I can see all of my hard work getting put in place. So if I'm ever having a rough day, I can just walk outside and say, okay, I had something to do with that. That's really cool. This is why it's all worth it, having any kind of hard day or anything like that.
That's got to be a fun piece about either of your jobs. You can go out into the world and see like true results from the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I know you've both mentioned a few things already that maybe interested you from a young age with engineering. I heard Legos, I heard robotics. I'm assuming that was probably first Lego or first robotics, Kelsey, or was that a similar platform? So lots of different experiences, but were there other things that maybe you did as a middle or high school student, other activities or experiences, people who influenced you, maybe outside of what we've already mentioned? Obviously, family was an influence that we heard of, that really helped shape your movement towards more experiences. Maybe what prompted you to get interested in robotics, or what prompted you to say, no, I don't want to continue robotics into college with the electrical engineering. And how could a student today gain some of those experiences if they're interested in engineering as a possibility? And I'd love to hear either perspective, really.
I mean, my biggest thing was robotics. It was something that gave me a lot of experience, and not just in how things work, but how to work on a team. You have all these different groups that have to somehow work together to build an end product that works and accomplishes your goals. And so I think that was something that just being on a team and having to compromise and work with other people and say, okay, well, my component won't fit here, but it'll fit here, and figuring out how that all works. And then also just, I served as our director of operations my senior year of high school. So I was in charge of making sure that everything got accomplished on time. And so for me, that was kind of something that I realized I liked project management. There's a whole other side of engineering that has to do with making sure that your project gets done on time and making sure that you're meeting the deadlines. And so I realized that engineering was so diverse and that was something else that I could look into. And so I think later on in my career, I'm looking into potentially doing some sort of engineering management rather than just a technical side of things. And then also I would just say, like, all of the science events at the Works. I grew up at the Works. It was something that I loved going there, and I loved playing in the different labs. And if you really take a step back and look at all of the different activities that are there in the museum, there's so much behind all of it. You can go through and do build a car, but there's so much more behind that. The physics of why does it work, or how to change it to make it so that your car goes faster. There's just so much that you can do there that's hands-on that will really help you kind of understand some of those more difficult concepts that college students are learning about, but it's an easier way to understand it.
Cool. Should add the disclaimer that I did not have Kelsey add that plug, but great to know that it was something that really did inspire you even at a young age to just keep being curious.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely a huge fan of the children science-y engagement museum. I mean, there was a children's science museum in the town that I grew up in. I know that my family had a membership there, and I have like many memories of just exploring in places like that. And it was exciting. I took my niece to COSI for the first time last year, and it was so much fun to watch her discover all that stuff that's at places like that. So I'll be excited to take her to the Works sometime, hopefully.
Yes.
For me, going back to what I was involved in middle school and high school, I grew up playing soccer. It took a lot. I was very active in it when I was a kid, and then played in high school, and then eventually was a team captain in high school. And then, so kind of learning that team building, and, you know, we have to work together as a team and working through things like that. And being a leader in that role was really helpful because there's people that are looking up to you, the people who are younger, and then also your fellow cohorts that are the same age as you. That experience of being a leader kind of transitions perfectly into kind of what I do on a daily basis. And then similarly in high school, I had a leadership role in a choral group that I was in. So it doesn't have to be engineering related. Those management of people, there is something to be said about being able to get a room of 100 kids in it, to like kind of get them from talking over each other and excited to see each other, and kind of getting everybody to come together and say, okay, it's time to focus and work on whatever our task is in front of us. So practicing skills like that has been monumental in my career.
That's a really interesting point too, because both of you have brought up not just engineering experiences, but just the soft skill experiences that we hear so much about, that really anything you're doing can help prepare you for your future education or career, that journey that you're going to take. And just to recognize that there are opportunities out there to take advantage of. Like you said, choir could be just as great of experience to develop, you know, a leadership opportunity as it would be to become any other club. So just those opportunities to learn and grow what your personal skill sets are, and then how you can apply them as you grow technical knowledge, like what you have now. Mm-hmm. We have another question that maybe gets at some of the projects that you guys are working on. And what I don't know what you can share about projects that you are not working on, or what you have completed, but is there any insight that you can give about sites that you are actively working on, or ones that you've recently completed, Colleen, or clients that you have worked with, Kelsey, you know, products that maybe are recognized as, hey, there's the steel that ArcelorMittal may have had a hand in? Because I know for you, Colleen, you're working all around our area.
Yeah.
Coasting signs everywhere, so.
Yeah, so just running in my head through the different projects I've been on, I've done the Childhood League, which is located on the Fort Hays campus. It's a early childhood development center. So that was my first project. and it was great. I had a lot of, so it's run primarily by women, which is really cool. So having an owner that's a primarily female run group is pretty neat. I've done work at Easton in some of the interior renovations. I've done some work at the airport here in Columbus, at AEP downtown. I've done the Pickaway County Fairgrounds in Circleville. And then I'm currently working on the Grandview Heights middle school and high school, new middle school, and then high school renovation. So that's where I've been here on this project site since late January. And the project is actually about 3 years long. So I'll be here through 2023. But it's really exciting for me because I live less than a mile from the job site. So it's really cool and really exciting that I am working on a project that is going to have it's a lifetime milestone project for this community, for one, especially that I'm living in. So it's really exciting.
That adds that extra element for you being able to walk outside
Oh, yeah.
and see the impact of your work, definitely.
Yeah.
What about you, Kelsey? What can you tell us? What steel should we be interested in?
So I don't do a lot with the product development side. A lot of what I do is more of just the day-to-day dispositioning of what we produce. But trying to think. I know if you go to Chicago, the beam that is in Millennium Park is made from steel from ArcelorMittal, which is really cool. And we also—
That's pretty famous.
Yeah. And a lot of cars that you drive, we have steel in your car. So whether it's the supports in the bottom or it's the outside panels of the doors or the hood, we produce a lot of the steel for that, as well as like the rail cars that you see on the side or on the railroads. We produce a lot of steel for that. We actually have a plate department here at Burns Harbor where I work. And so we do stuff for that, as well as ships. So all of the side panels on ships, we do those as well. So it's not anything super specific, but we do have a hand in a lot of different products. So.
Very interesting. I'm excited that I now can go out and kind of think about the locations of both of your organizations and everything that we do. So for somebody who might be interested in becoming an engineer, we'll leave it open type of engineer, what might be like the singular piece of advice if you had to, narrow it down to one thing that you would offer from your experiences? What might you say?
I would say stick through it.
Stick through it.
Yeah. So for me personally, that I excelled in math and science in high school. And then when I got to college, that first year of college is very similar. It's a lot of things that you kind of already know, and they're kind of expanding on it a little bit. And then sophomore year is typically the hardest for a lot of people because everything's new and nothing is as familiar as it was the previous year. And but it is 100% worth it to stick through it and buckle down, and it'll all be worth it in the end.
Kelsey, you're nodding.
I would definitely agree with that. I'd also say that don't try to be perfect at everything. It's so easy to get into a rut and say, I'm going to do this perfectly. I'm going to do this 110% every time. And sometimes that's just not possible. I wore myself out a lot in college because I was trying so hard to be perfect, to get every assignment 100%. But I think the biggest thing is just do the absolute best that you can. Put in as much effort as you can without sacrificing your self-care and taking the time to sleep and eat properly and exercise and go out and do fun things. So it's not always getting the perfect grades or doing the perfect things that look good on college applications or in job interviews, but it's doing good enough so that you can have time to build yourself more outside of just your academics. I took a lot of time to join student organizations and volunteer to make myself a better person all around rather than just an engineer that knows the stuff that's on paper.
I think that's a little bit of like knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and getting to know what those are, right? Yeah. And I know, Kelsey, from hearing from you in other situations, that you had a lot of involvement with the Society of Women Engineers organization. Would you like to talk maybe a little bit about how that is another piece that a support network when you're moving through as a professional woman engineer, and what that can do for helping you grow in your field or providing kind of that resource network for you?
Yeah, definitely. So the Society of Women Engineers, it's a group made up of men and women that are either engineers or they support women in engineering. And so I joined that my first year of college, and I wasn't super involved until my second year of college, but I had a couple of leadership positions. And so my first couple of years, I got assigned a mentor. So it was someone else who was a little higher up in their classes, and someone that I could reach out to and talk to them about what to expect as I'm going through classes, or what to expect when I get to internships. And so one of the biggest things for that organization that it gave me was having a network of people. And I think that's so important to know that as you're going through, like Colleen said, it's not going to be easy all the time. There are going to be struggles and bumps in the road, but if you have people to reach out to and a network of people to support you as you're going through those bumps, it's really, really helpful. And I still keep in contact with a lot of the people that I met through that. And then I also had the opportunity to do tons of professional development events. So I learned how to write my resume. I learned how to interact with companies. I learned what are do's and don'ts when you go to a career fair. And so there was a lot of opportunities for me to interact with companies as I was going through college. And then when I got to my career, I moved away from home, and it was really difficult. I didn't know a lot of people here, but so I reached out to SWE to try and find some people around me, but there wasn't a solidified section in the area. So I worked through the company to find other women in engineering, and that has been so helpful because you go into a meeting and you're the only woman there. So then when you can share those experiences with the other women that are in that organization, it really helps to know that you're not alone, that everyone's kind of been there. They've been interrupted in meetings. They've had their ideas overlooked, but then you get ideas on how to improve on that. So finding friends in meetings to repeat your ideas and things like that. So it's been an organization that's been a network to support everything that I do. So yeah, I will talk about SWE all day. So.
Well, it was some great advice and experiences that you had to kind of seek out those core network supports. So our questions are flying furious, and so I think I'll go ahead and open that up a little bit to some of those before we wrap up with some other items. But talking a little bit more about that that networking side, what are your thoughts on being in the engineering field and how you feel about your job security? Both in general, but also thinking maybe in our current times. I bet that your jobs have been pretty secure throughout pandemic timeframes. I know construction has kind of boomed, for example, Colleen, so it's not something that you maybe have had to make very many adjustments for. But your security and growth in your field, how do you feel that is compared to other opportunities that you might have had, or even just other engineering fields that you're familiar with? Any advice there? Why to go into engineering?
I mean, for me, yeah, I have no, I guess, concerns about my job security at this point. We have a pretty good feedback loop with internally where we kind of review how our performance is. So I feel pretty confident in terms of within my individual company, and then as well, my company, I know we've been trying to look forward and looking ahead and seeing how the industry changes and trying to be in front of the 8 ball a little bit, and trying to make sure that our people have that security and that income, because we are also a family-based company. So our number one priority is making sure that our people are taken care of. So it is nice to know that I kind of always have that fallback that I am an engineer. And typically I think people, when you say I'm an engineer, they say, oh, you must be really smart. And there's some of that, but then there's also, like we've kind of talked a little bit about, the people skills and your flexibility And so your ability to do problem solving, your ability to work people translates from one industry to the next. It's just a different set of jargon that you would have to learn. So having that kind of skill set as an engineer, I think, is very helpful to have if there were to be any kind of issue down the line.
No, those are great pieces of advice. Did you want to add anything, Kelsey?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Just being an engineer in general is something that it's so versatile. I mean, you can work in manufacturing, you can work in research, you can work in law, you can become a patent lawyer, you can become a doctor. There's so many different outlets that you can go through with engineering. So just having that background gives you so many different options that if one job doesn't work out, you're going to have a pretty easy time finding another job that will work out. So.
Great. What about kind of staying along that line and some of the things we talked about? What's the hardest thing that you would say is part of your job?
Being young,
Okay.
younger, not young, but you know what I mean. So starting out, I didn't know as much about construction itself. So that kind of, you have that stereotypical, like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about kind of thing. So, and people kind of, when they automatically look at me, sometimes they might assume that I don't know, even 5 years in now. So that's a little bit difficult to navigate sometimes. But I have a great team around me that is, it's really helpful when you have a supportive team that you're working with and people who give you the confidence, and when you don't, just to not be afraid to ask questions either, because it would be worse to pretend like you knew what you were talking about and then find out later that you didn't actually know, than to just ask the question and be honest about it. And that goes a lot longer than pretending. So it is a little bit difficult being younger, but I think now that as I've been in the industry for about 5 years now, I have a lot more confidence, which definitely helps.
You know, and that's something that is a common feedback. If you look at a lot of the research that's on women in STEM fields, you know, that imposter syndrome usually does kind of persist for a few years as you engage in STEM fields. So it's nice to hear what type of strategies you're using to help, you know, make your place known, feel comfortable, and learn in those situations. Those are all really important elements. And Kelsey, I think you already mentioned a little bit about a network of support. You mentioned, you know, tricks that you've learned through your networks to kind of combat possibly the same situation of being young in your field. Yeah. We have another one here about asking just your education path. So maybe starting with high school, but also just reminding folks where you went to college, anything that you did in your education and career path before your current positions. Kelsey, why don't you start with your high school path?
Awesome. So I went to Granville High School. I took AP Calculus. I think it was the first one. I think it's AB, if I remember correctly. And then Physics 2. Both of those really helped me have a good foundation for my first years of college. And then for college, I went to the Ohio State University. Actually kind of excited because I was a 4th generation Buckeye. So it was super awesome. And yeah, like I said before, I went in engineering undeclared and then later declared as a material science and engineering major. And then I think it was my 2nd and 3rd year of college, I had internships with ArcelorMittal over the summer, which then helped me solidify my full-time job after college.
So just to summarize that, then you would have a Bachelor of Science in your engineering degree?
Yes.
And then moved directly from your internships into your full-time position. Okay. And Colleen, what about you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. And so that's where I graduated from high school. And then while I was in high school, I took AP Calculus and AP Physics, where I had the teacher who said, you should probably go into engineering. And then I went to the University of Dayton and where I was a civil engineering student. I started out civil and then also graduated. So I have my bachelor's in engineering, in civil engineering. Throughout school, I did 2 summer internships with a GE plant in Erie, where I did some lean training, which is like a manufacturing thing. And then also 2 summers after that, I did it's a program called Ethos at the University of Dayton. It's kind of like a Engineers Without Borders program. So I was able to spend the summer in Guatemala and then in Malawi in Africa, those 2 separate summers working on engineering projects. And then I was recruited out of college into my current position.
Okay. That sounds really interesting that you had the, international experiences with the engineering projects. Very cool.
Yeah, it was the reason why I chose UD, was that program.
Well, while we're seeing if there are any other questions from our audience, what is a piece of advice you might give your younger self? If you can look back now, not to say that you're not still young, but your younger self as you move forward through this, what's something that maybe would have made your path easier, might have solved a problem, or would have given you that ledge or leverage you needed, boost of confidence to tackle something? It's hard to narrow it down to one piece of advice, I know.
I can start. I think one of the biggest things is just spending some time to figure out why you want to go into a specific career. So even if you're not considering engineering, just kind of take time and figure out what about that career makes you want to be in that field. Is it because of the enjoyment that you get from it? Is it the financial security? Just making sure that you are going into a career for the right reasons, because I've seen so many people that they pick a job because, oh, well, I'm going to make a lot of money, but then they don't enjoy it and they go to work miserable every day. And then it makes it, number one, it makes it really hard to get up and go to work. And sometimes it can come over into your personal life. It can cause you to kind of like take out that sadness of not picking the right career on your friends and family, which isn't fun for them. So just like when you're going through figuring out what career you want to go into, figure out what it is that you enjoy and what you like about that career and why you want to go into it, and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons.
Good advice.
Yeah. I received similar advice from my dad when I was younger. He said, figure out what you like to do, and then you can just figure out a way to make money doing it, and then you'll be good. For what I would say, to just from my experience, is that I think you may have said it earlier, Kelsey, was that you don't have to be perfect. You just do your best, and people will see that you are trying your best, and that you don't have to worry about being 100% all the time, because you need to make sure that you take time for yourself too. And that bit of self-care is really important.
Well, what are we leaving out? What do you think is an important piece of the discussion to young students, young men or women who are really just kind of exploring STEM, are taking a look at maybe engineering, maybe that's the thing that they do have interest in, or maybe they're like, I didn't even know that you could be so specific into the different fields. What are we missing in this conversation to encourage our next generation of industry professionals like you? Any last thoughts before we turn it over?
I'd say never be afraid to ask questions. There is no stupid question except for the one that you don't ask. And I struggled with that a lot. I never wanted to ask the question because I was like, oh, well, I feel like I should know this. But then when I kind of got over that and learned that, yes, it's okay to ask questions. It's good to go to office hours and talk with your professors. It's good to ask your fellow classmates questions. It's good to ask questions in the lectures. It really helped me a lot, and it's helped me a lot in my career too. I work for a really large company, so there's not always someone standing over your shoulder giving you advice on how to do things. And so I had to be my own advocate and ask questions and make sure that I understood what was going on, and realizing that there are so many other people that are in the same boat as you. They're going to have no idea what they're doing when they start, but the more questions you ask, the more information you'll gather and the more confident you'll be in your career, which then leads to success. So never be afraid to ask a question.
I'm glad that you said that because I've asked a lot of questions of you today. So Colleen, what would you say is a person in your life that has stuck with you and helped you through times in your career that has really helped be that influencing force to get you through, to move you forward, to persevere? We've mentioned those kind of qualities a lot. Is there somebody or an experience that really was a key influencer in moving you to where you are today and where you want to go in the future?
Yeah, I have a really good friend that I met in college. She was kind of like, she's like a mentor. She's a big for me, and her field is not in engineering, but every time I talk to her, I was having a hard time, I would just give her a call, and she's always available and always gives me the best pep talk you could ever imagine, and is always like, you are awesome, you can do this, you know, there's nothing that you can't put your mind to that you can't overcome. So she's been that rock for me, and it's really great, even though we don't live in the same city, that I know that I always have her to kind of build me up when I need a little bit of building. So
Kelsey, what about you? Did you have a mentor that has really, you know, advocated for you and pushed you to continue going?
Yeah, so when I started my job here, I was in our hot mill department. So that's where they take the big thick slabs and roll them out into a coil that kind of looks like a roll of toilet paper. And I didn't know anything about that department, but fortunately there was a gentleman there who he worked in the mill for 50 plus years, and he gave me a lot of advice and helped me work through projects and problems. And he was someone that was really helpful. I think I went through a tough time just transitioning from being in college and having a lot of people around to being a professional and kind of having to figure things out on my own. So he was definitely a big influence, and someone who has given me a lot of the skills that I have now, being in a different department, and how to work through difficult situations and continue to persevere and become the best engineer I can be. So.
Well, it's great to hear that you can have that type of inspiration from both within your field and outside of your field, because you know, everybody does need that little bit of boost to help you remember to keep going and to encourage you to keep learning and growing in your career. Well, ladies, it was great to talk to you today and to learn a little bit about your stories and what you do in your different fields of engineering. I feel like I know so much more about both of your companies and disciplines than I did before we started. And I do want to encourage anybody who still has any last questions, we can pop those in the chat box. If we don't get to them today, we will make sure to send those along to Kelsey and Colleen and get that information back to you. Coming up next, while we're waiting to see if we have any last questions, I do want to remind everyone that our next panel will be taking place on October 28th next week, and we'll be just working with women in the health profession. So we'll focus on medicine and health with two wonderful doctors here from our local community. So make sure you tune in and learn a little bit from them about what it means to work in medicine and health. Well, if I don't see any additional questions, that is all I have for today. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Colleen and Kelsey, it was great to talk to you.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.